Welcome to this CTP training video session on how much to charge as a beginning translator. It's important to charge just enough, but not too much, so that you can start getting business, but not be flooded with it. You may have to start out with low rates or doing pro bono work, but as soon as possible, you want to make sure you're not competing for work merely based on price. Note, this video cannot substitute for professional tax, accounting, legal, business, or insurance advice. What to consider? There are 3 ways to determine your rate: the going rate, i.e. the market, and how it intersects with your skills and experience, your operating costs versus your productivity, and how much you want to earn per week, per month, or per year. Let's look at each of these in more detail. Economics 101 for translators. How much to charge is, at the core, a question of basic economics, and it all boils down to supply and demand. Those are the first things to look at, especially if you're a beginning translator. On the demand side, is there a huge demand for your language pair or pairs and specialty or specialties and/or the services you provide? In general, the more something is in demand, the more you can charge for it. On the supply side, is there a huge supply of translators in your language pair or pairs and specialty or specialties, or who provide the same services as you? In general, the greater the talent pool, in other words, the bigger the supply reservoir, if you will, the less you can charge for it. Optimally, you want to offer a skill set, what you supply, that intersects with the market's requirements, what the market demands, at the point where you can get the most for your hard work. Or, to put it another way, there will always be someone who can charge less than you can, so try to leverage your skills to the best of your ability so that you can charge for them. How can you differentiate yourself? You'll want to try to add value either through excellent service, speed, expertise, or experience. So although you may need to start with low rates to get established, try to get yourself the best edge you can so that you can start earning a living sooner rather than later. Your skills and experience, a major aspect of what you supply. If your language pair or pairs and specialty or specialties are pretty common, you probably can't charge as much as someone with rarer skills. And you probably can't translate as quickly as someone who's been doing it for years. But you can improve your position vis-a-vis the market, even as a beginning translator, by having specialty experience, certifications, translator tools, and recommendations. Specialty skills. As a beginner, you may not have experience yet as a translator, but you may well already have immense skills and experience in your specialty field. That might help you charge a more favorable rate. Degrees and certifications. If you have them, tout them. A beginning translator who has a translator's degree or a certification, such as this CTP translation program, has a leg up on someone who has no verifiable credentials in the field. Translator tools and additional services such as desktop publishing, DTP. Are you willing or able to purchase one of the more common CAT software programs? Quick at learning software? Experienced as a designer? These might be a way for you to get your foot in the door with some of the agencies that require specific CAT tools or DTP software. Study which programs might be appropriate for your field and see which are the most used in general. We'll cover translation software in a later video. Recommendations. If you come personally recommended, you may be able to charge more than if your client has never ever heard of you. Your place in the marketplace as a supplier of translations is determined by these factors. Market rates, where supply and demand intersect. Now that we've reviewed the basics of supply and demand in an abstract way and looked at how your skills affect what you supply, how do you figure out what to charge? If you're a member of many of the various online translator networks, you may find that they show the average translator rates for their members. This is a wonderful member benefit and tool. Take advantage of it. If you're translating for local businesses, the local cost of living, cost of doing business, and cost of labor are all items to take into account when bidding on a project. You might consider talking to the local Chamber of Commerce, Small Business Owners Association, or other similar organizations in your area. Start bidding on a few jobs that look like you can handle them. If you consistently find you are being passed over for work, ask why, politely. You can also even ask for starting out advice from a potential client who has turned you down. This may take a bit of courage, but it's information you need to know. It may simply be that other people are better known in the field or have worked with a business or agency before. There's not much you can do there except make sure that people know you're available in a pinch, or should they want someone new or other alternatives. And it may simply be that your level of experience is too low, at which point you just need to gain experience. But it may be more a matter of charging too much for your level of experience. More on experience versus rates in the next slide. Your costs versus your productivity. Another way to figure out what you should charge is based on costs versus productivity. Figure out your operating costs per week or month or even year, and then figure out roughly how much you think you can translate in the same period. Then determine what rate you will need to cover your costs. This will set your minimum rate. Ideally, of course, you want to do more than cover your costs. And as a beginner, you may need to take on a few low-cost and/or pro bono projects to get yourself established and to get enough experience to be taken seriously. So this minimum rate would be for after those initial projects. If there is no way for you to cover your costs and charge anything like what you think market rates are, perhaps you may need to examine all your costs with an eye to cutting some of them. What would you like to earn this year and the next? A third way to figure out what to charge is to determine your target income. Start out by looking at your overall potential productivity. Target a reasonable income for yourself, your wished-for standard of living. Then figure out what you need to charge to get to that target income. Allow for the fact that in your first year or two you may not be able to meet your target income. The nitty-gritty. As a translator, you will generally charge by the source word. Don't use the target word, it's a moving target, and allows for disagreement. If you're working with a UK agency, you'll generally be talking about rates per 1,000 words. You may also want to have an hourly fee, particularly for editing, rewriting, or proofreading. Other ways of charging exist, per page or sheet, per line, per character, but they are less standard and/or tend to apply to specific markets or types of translations. Other considerations. There are other factors to take into consideration in determining your rates. Many, but not all, of these may only apply later on, after you're established, but it's good to become familiar with them early on. Minimum fees. Do you want to have a minimum rate, i.e. the lowest you'll accept to turn on your computer, so to speak? Do you want to add an upcharge for certain kinds of file formats that require more time and effort to work with? An Adobe Acrobat PDF file is the classic example here, but there are others. What about weekend work, or rush work, or holidays? Do you want to add an upcharge? And if so, how much? A percentage of the overall fee is common here, but not all translators add these charges. If you do decide to do so, how will you define rush or weekend work? Do you want to give volume discounts for a large project or a regular client who gives you steady work? Perhaps offering a lower rate might be the way to go here. If you use CAT tools, especially SDL Trados, do you want to offer a discount or lower rate for fuzzy matches? This is controversial, as it can lower your income immensely, and the tools themselves are not cheap. Finally, do you want to add extra fees for wires, foreign checks, foreign currencies, or PayPal in North America, or money bookers in Europe? Or do you plan to absorb those costs as part of doing business, or just include them in your initial bid? And what forms of payment are you willing to accept? There are benefits and advantages to almost all forms. Figuring out what to charge isn't rocket science, but it can be tricky, especially at the start. You have to start somewhere, but you'll never win if you compete simply on price. Thank you for joining us for this CTP training video session on how much to charge as a beginning translator.